In the air, center field. This should do it. Robles will squeeze it, and there it is. The Washington Nationals are National League champions. There will be a World Series in D.C.
I am Dave Ross. Welcome inside the Stadium Studios, talking Major League Baseball with our guys here. We got Steve Phillips, our GM, our skipper, John Farrell, and our player, Trevor Plouffe. And gentlemen, the Washington Nationals, can you believe it? They've moved on to the World Series. And I just wonder now in 2019, when you get into the playoffs, Steve, I'll start off with you. Is it really a crapshoot as a GM going, hey, I know I put this team together. Now it's up to the boys, and who knows who the best team really is?
Well, you know, if you ask Billy Beane of the Oakland A's, Billy came out and said that, listen, getting to the playoffs is great, but then it's a crapshoot once you get there. So many different things can happen, and you can have bad luck, and things can go against you. I never want to look at it that way because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When something goes wrong, then you go, oh, yep, that's the thing this year that's going to go wrong for us. Now, here's the thing. In the last 50 years, only 13 times has the team with the best record gone on to win the World Series. That's 26% of the time. So that's not great numbers. It's better than a lesser percentage. But I think it comes down to there are teams built to win over the regular season. There are teams built in the postseason. And absolutely, the worst team in baseball can beat the best team in baseball in a 7-game series. But I still think you can't surrender control and think that fate is going to determine it. You have to go out and take action to go out and get the job done. So yes, it is a bit of a crapshoot. Things can go wrong, but I think you can control your fate to a certain degree.
John, you know what this is like as managing a team to a World Series championship. How difficult is it? Because you might have had the best team, but as Steve says, when you have the crapshoot mentality here, anybody can win on any given series.
Well, there's no question about that. And I think what you're seeing, even in this most recent series with the Nationals, that there's going to be contributions from players that you didn't expect, whether it's a solo home run by Robles, quality innings in middle relief by Ty Rainey. I think there's probably a 25% probability of the crapshoot phenomenon you're talking about. But I think for any team to advance, you've got to be able to pitch first and foremost. And then I think it gives yourself a chance to maybe capitalize on a mistake. But make no mistake, teams that get in, you've got to be very good. But it's really the team that comes together and catches a few breaks along the way that probably excels through the World Series.
And Trevor, I got to imagine as the player here, when you guys do get into the postseason, you do feel like, all right, why not us since we've made it this far?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, it never really happened in my career. With the Twins, we always needed some starting pitching, so I think that's kind of where it starts. But what I think we're seeing now is teams that are analytically driven, and most teams are headed that way. You know, they plan for these 162-game seasons because it's a bigger sample size. So all the statistics that they're using, they know that one series doesn't mean much, that over the course of the season, all those numbers will regress to the mean. And then once you get into the postseason, you have these 5-game series, a 7-game series, and even a 1-game wild card where anything can happen. So those big sample sizes now are gone. And you can have some things happen, like an error, a bad bounce, a pitcher step up and just completely shut you out. So I think that's kind of what we're talking about. I was always told as a player, let's get your foot in the door and see what happens. I think now what we're kind of seeing is with this tanking baseball where there's a lot of teams that aren't in it, I think a lot of teams now in July and even August, they're not getting players to help them get to the postseason. They're already planning on getting to the postseason, and they're making these trades and these moves so they can be set up for October. And I think that's where you're going to find these teams that are winning be successful at.
I do wonder, gentlemen, maybe in a bigger scale here, John, I'll go back to you to start off this discussion. Are we getting the best team represented as the World Series champion each and every year? Is the playoff system, I guess, the correct system in Major League Baseball?
I think there's nothing wrong with the system as it stands today, but kind of building off of Trevor's point, the teams that are so analytically driven and probably swing more to that side are going to have that more even-tempered team. I find it interesting, the teams that, and if the Nationals prevail this year, you look at over the last 10 years, it's the less analytically driven front offices that have prevailed because they've maybe been more risk takers to acquire players, and those are the players that make the difference come October.
Steve, what do you think about that with analytics and baseball, certainly from a GM's perspective?
Well, I mean, the one thing that we know is it's not the best team that wins the World Series. It's the team playing the best in the tournament at the end of the season. And I think over a course of 162 games, it doesn't take the same sort of style or structure of a team to win. You can win with a team of 5 number 2, number 3 starters over 162 games to qualify for the playoffs. But that same team doesn't match up nearly as well in the postseason. And so it really is 2 different games. Once you get to the postseason, sprinters win, right? It's a marathon race in the regular season, and then it's a sprint. Those diverse teams, those versatile teams in the postseason are the ones that can win. The other thing to remember is it's a 25-man roster. It's a 40-man roster over 162 games. When you get to the postseason, you can use 3 starters, maybe a 4th, and 2 or 3 relievers and run the table and win games. It's sort of what we're seeing. So it's a different game. The off days sort of being factored in, changed the way a manager can manage and use his bullpen. But I'll say this, that with the new analytics, we're seeing small market teams that can't buy power bats or power arms in the rotation, still have a pathway to get to the postseason. We saw the Twins, we saw the A's, we saw the Rays all have a shot. That being said, if the Astros win, and they're still alive this year, then 3 of the last 4 years, the team with the best record of the regular season will win the World Series. Trevor,
what's your thought on that? Because I think it's very interesting there when you do look at the analytics, as you brought up, versus, all right, maybe it is factoring in that the best teams still are winning, and it's not as big a crapshoot as we might make it out to be.
Well, like I said earlier, these teams that build these sizable leads in their division, they understand that they're going to get to the playoffs pretty early on in the season. And now they're able to, say, hey, let's not make it so much of a crapshoot. We know what we need to do in the postseason, so let's make moves, not to get us to the postseason, but moves that are going to help us in the postseason. I think that's the biggest key here is they're looking at things differently. They're looking at acquisitions differently, because they know they're going to be in the playoffs much earlier than in previous years where there was a more balanced league.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear from a player, a manager, and a GM as to putting together the team that might win the World Series. The Nationals waiting for either the Yankees or the Astros in that one. Steve Phillips, John Farrell, Trevor Plouffe, always enjoy the conversation talking baseball right here at Stadium.